Avoidants can form lifelong bonds, though the world often misunderstands them and paints them as people incapable of true intimacy. It is easy to believe that someone who pulls away when things get close, who values independence so fiercely, must not be capable of deep, lasting love. Yet that is only the surface. Beneath the protective walls, beneath the distance they create, there lies a longing as powerful as anyone else's. A longing to be known, to be safe, to have a love that endures. The difference is not that they do not want love. It is that they have learned to survive by fearing what love might take from them. They have been taught, sometimes through painful experiences, that depending on someone is dangerous. And so they retreat not out of coldness, but out of protection. When people say avoidance cannot commit, what they miss is that commitment for them does not happen through force, demand, or pressure. It happens through the slow realization that someone exists who does not threaten their sense of self. The partner who wins their loyalty forever is the one who proves that love can exist without chains. For an avoidant, closeness can feel like losing air, as though intimacy means suffocation. But when they encounter a person who loves with openness, who allows space while still showing up with warmth, the avoidant begins to realize that love does not mean losing freedom. It means finding a place where freedom and connection can coexist. This is why lifelong bonds are not just possible for avoidants, they can be some of the strongest bonds you will ever witness. Because when an avoidant finally trusts, they trust with a depth born out of rarity. They do not give themselves away lightly, and so when they do, it is not casual, it is permanent. Their loyalty is profound, their devotion unshakable, because it is not given to many. It is given to the one who stayed consistent without suffocating, patient without being passive, and loving without being controlling. It is important to understand that avoidants are not broken. They are not incapable of love. They are cautious in love. They need to feel secure before they open the most fragile parts of themselves. They need to know that their independence will not be stripped away, that their boundaries will not be ignored. Once they feel this safety, the very walls that once kept love out transform into pillars that hold love steady. And from that foundation, a lifelong bond can grow. For those who love an avoidant, the lesson is not to chase, not to prove your worth through sacrifice, not to wait endlessly and hope they will change. The lesson is to remain strong in who you are, to offer love consistently without losing self-respect. The moment love becomes a transaction, the bond begins to crack. But when love is offered freely, without pressure, and when both people honor one another's boundaries, an avoidant begins to relax into the relationship. The silence between texts feels less threatening. The moments of space feel less like rejection and more like breathing room. And slowly trust takes root. When it does, an avoidant can love for life. They may not be the ones who dive headfirst into passion with reckless abandon, but they are the ones who, once they choose you, stand by you through storms. They bond not out of desperation, but out of certainty. They do not leave when things get hard, because they have built their love on the foundation of safety and respect. That is why avoidance, though misunderstood, can form the most enduring bonds of all, bonds that are not just for a moment, but for forever. Bonding happens with the right person. That single truth is often overlooked when people talk about avoidance. Too often the conversation centers on what avoidants do wrong, how they pull away, how they fear intimacy, how they can't seem to handle closeness without retreating into distance. And while there is truth in those observations, it paints only half the picture. The other half, the part that rarely gets attention, is that avoidants are fully capable of forming profound and lasting bonds. They don't connect with everyone, and that's what makes their true attachment so rare and powerful. For an avoidant, bonding isn't about just finding someone attractive or interesting. It's about finding the one person who allows them to feel safe enough to let down their guard without the fear of being smothered or trapped. The right person for an avoidant doesn't come with demands that strip away freedom. Instead, they embody a quiet confidence, a steadiness that says, I don't need to control you to love you. This person respects the rhythms of the avoidant's inner world. They know that love for an avoidant cannot be rushed or forced. That pressure only breeds more retreat. The right person creates a space where independence and closeness coexist, where being together doesn't mean losing oneself. This balance is everything. An avoidant has spent so much of their life associating intimacy with risk that to finally encounter someone who respects their space while still offering warmth feels almost revolutionary. It's not about absence of love, it's about presence without intrusion. When an avoidant finds that person, their protective instincts slowly begin to soften. The walls, built high and strong through years of self-preservation, start to show cracks. Trust for them doesn't flood in like a wave. It trickles in drop by drop as consistency is proven, as reassurance is shown, as safety becomes more than an idea and starts to feel like a lived reality. The right person doesn't shame them for their hesitations. Instead, they show patience, modeling a kind of love that is steady, resilient, and not easily shaken. And in turn, the avoidant begins to risk small steps toward vulnerability, knowing they won't be punished for needing space or for moving at their own pace. This is why the bond with the right person becomes so enduring. For an avoidant, love has always been something dangerous, something to handle carefully or avoid altogether. But with the right person, love transforms into something sustainable. It stops being about self-protection and starts being about genuine connection. The avoidant feels seen not only for their strengths, but also for their fears and fragilities. They experience closeness that doesn't demand they abandon themselves, and in that paradox, they find freedom. When they discover that they can love deeply without being consumed, they don't just stay in the relationship, they thrive in it. And once that trust is cemented, the bond doesn't fade with time, it grows stronger because it was built on respect, patience, and the understanding that love does not have to equal loss of self. Bonding happens with the right person, not with the person who pushes too hard, not with the one who confuses love with control, and not with someone who sacrifices their own self-worth just to keep the avoidant close. It happens with the one who can hold love lightly yet firmly, who can walk beside them without pulling them forward or holding them back. That kind of connection is rare, but when it happens, it has the power to last a lifetime. Respect, not control, is key. This simple phrase carries the power to change the way we think about love, connection, and the way we approach avoidant partners. Too often, people believe that in order to hold on to someone, they need to manage, steer, or even manipulate them into staying close. They cling tighter when the other person pulls away. They raise their voice when they feel ignored, and they push harder when their partner asks for space. On the surface, these actions come from fear, from the desperate urge not to lose someone important. But for an avoidant who already associates intimacy with suffocation, this attempt at control doesn't feel like love. It feels like a trap, and traps are the very thing they've been running from their whole lives. Respect, on the other hand, works differently. Respect says, I see you, I hear you, and I understand your needs may not always look like mine. Respect doesn't mean you agree with every withdrawal or silence, but it means you don't punish the person for it. You don't weaponize their space by calling it rejection, and you don't try to shame them into closeness. Instead, you create an environment where they begin to learn that their independence won't cost them love, and that their individuality won't make them unworthy of connection. This is when the avoidant starts to feel something they rarely feel in relationships: safety. And safety is the foundation of trust. Think about the difference between control and respect in your own life. Imagine someone telling you where to go, what to say, how to feel, and how to behave in order to be worthy of their affection. That kind of love feels conditional. It creates resentment and a constant sense of never being good enough. Now imagine someone who says, you don't have to perform for me to stay. You don't have to be perfect for me to choose you. You can have your space, your thoughts, your moments of silence, and I'll still be here, steady. That's not weakness, that's strength. Because it takes a strong person to love without control, and to trust that real connection doesn't require force. Avoidants, deep down, long for connection just like anyone else. They're not cold and they're not incapable of love, but they've often learned through painful experiences that closeness can mean losing themselves, being disappointed, or being judged for their natural rhythm. When someone enters their life who respects that rhythm, the entire dynamic shifts. Respect allows them to exhale. It lets them experiment with vulnerability without feeling like they'll be consumed by it. In that space, they begin to open up, share more, and invest more. And what looked like distance before becomes an opportunity to build a bond that's authentic and lasting. Control may feel like the quickest route to security, but it almost always backfires. The moment you try to force intimacy, it slips through your fingers. Respect, however, is patient. It doesn't demand instant results, and it doesn't collapse when things aren't perfect. It creates room for growth, for mistakes, for human imperfection. And that's exactly what an avoidant needs in order to attach in a way that feels genuine. Respect doesn't mean ignoring your own needs or silencing your voice. It means setting healthy boundaries while still offering love without strings attached. It means saying, I care about you, but I care about myself too, and I trust we can find a way that honors us both. When you approach a relationship with respect rather than control, you stop playing tug of war. You're no longer trying to drag the other person closer, nor are you letting them drift endlessly away. Instead, you meet in the middle, where freedom and connection coexist. For an avoidant, that balance is rare, but once they find it, it becomes unforgettable. They remember the person who gave them space without abandonment, love without control, and acceptance without condition. And that memory can become the bond that lasts forever. Safety is the foundation of any real bond, but for someone with avoidant tendencies, it's the very thing that decides whether they let you close or keep you at arm's length. An avoidant isn't running because they don't feel attraction, or even because they don't care. They're running because closeness has historically felt dangerous. Maybe it reminded them of being let down as a child. Maybe it was rejection. Maybe it was the feeling that when they relied on someone, they were left disappointed. Whatever the root, their nervous system has learned to equate intimacy with risk. So when someone tries to get closer, even with good intentions, their instinct is to push away. Safety isn't a luxury for them. It's the only way trust can take root. Think of safety not as something dramatic, but as something consistent. It shows up in the way you speak, the way you respond, and the way you honor their boundaries. Safety is when you don't use love as a bargaining chip. It's when you don't punish them for needing space, and you don't take their pauses as personal rejection. Instead, you show that your affection isn't fragile, that it won't collapse the moment they pull back for air. This doesn't mean you tolerate neglect or abandon your own needs, but it does mean you demonstrate that love can exist without ultimatums. For someone who fears being swallowed whole by connection, that kind of reassurance is oxygen. Over time, safety is what rewires their belief system. When they see that you can give them room without vanishing, that you can express desire without pressure, that you can listen without judgment, a shift begins. It's not fast and it's not linear. There will be moments when they retreat, moments when old fears surface, moments when you wonder if progress is being made. But the steady presence of safety has a compounding effect. It tells their nervous system over and over that intimacy doesn't have to hurt. That opening the door doesn't mean losing control. That love can feel like a partnership instead of a prison. Safety also means being secure in yourself. You can't fake this. An avoidant will feel the difference between someone who respects their independence because they understand it and someone who tolerates it while secretly seething with resentment. If you don't anchor yourself, you'll end up resenting their walls, and they'll feel the sting of your frustration. But when you stand in your own self-worth, when you show them that your life is full and strong regardless of their moments of distance, you stop being a threat. Instead of fearing that closeness with you will erase them, they realize that you want to add to their life, not consume it. That recognition is what makes them start to lower their guard. And the beauty of safety is that it transforms both people. For the avoidant, it's the first time they may experience intimacy without panic. For their partner, it's a practice in patience, respect, and unconditional love. Together, it builds a bond that's not held together by fear of loss, but by the trust that neither person has to sacrifice themselves to stay connected. Safety builds trust, and once trust is built, an avoidant doesn't just stay. They begin to love with a depth and loyalty that can last forever. Strength and self-respect matter more than most people realize when it comes to building a meaningful relationship. especially with someone who carries avoidant tendencies. Often, we think that love is about proving ourselves, about showing someone how much we're willing to give, how much we're willing to sacrifice. But the truth is, when you lose yourself in that sacrifice, when you pour endlessly without boundaries, you don't create love, you create dependence, imbalance, and eventually resentment. For an avoidant, that kind of energy doesn't feel like love at all. It feels like pressure, and pressure is the very thing they fear most. What changes everything is the strength to stand firm in who you are and the self-respect to never trade your worth for temporary closeness. When you're strong, you can love without losing your center. You can give without emptying yourself. You can stay steady when the other person pulls back. Instead of collapsing into anxiety or chasing after them in panic, that steadiness is magnetic because it tells the avoidant person something they've rarely felt in their lives: safety. Safety in the sense that you won't crumble if they take a step back. Safety in the sense that your world doesn't fall apart because they need space. This kind of strength isn't loud or controlling. It's quiet, calm, and unshakable. It says, I can love you, and I can also love myself enough not to disappear in the process. Self-respect becomes the bridge that holds the relationship steady. If you respect yourself, you won't tolerate being ignored endlessly or treated carelessly. You won't chase love that isn't reciprocated, and you won't settle for scraps of attention. That doesn't just protect you. It also shows the avoidant that love doesn't mean they can take advantage. It doesn't mean they get to withdraw forever without consequence. In fact, it sets a model. It teaches them that boundaries exist not to punish, but to preserve the dignity of both people. And when they see that you're strong enough to walk away, if needed, paradoxically, they begin to trust that you're someone they can stay close to without being swallowed whole. Strength and self-respect are also what prevent bitterness. If you give more than you have, if you bend so far you break, resentment always follows. You start to feel used, unseen, or undervalued. And when that happens, no amount of love can save the bond. But when you hold on to your sense of worth, you never give more than you can afford. You never lose track of your own needs. That balance makes your love sustainable. The avoidant learns that your affection isn't a trap. It's a choice you make every day, a choice rooted in clarity, not desperation. That kind of love is rare, and it's the kind that makes someone who fears closeness rethink what it means to be connected. The greatest irony is that the very thing avoidants fear, being trapped by love, is dissolved not by pulling them closer, but by standing tall in your own strength. They discover that real closeness doesn't come from pressure or self-sacrifice. It comes from the steady presence of someone who refuses to lose themselves while loving another. And when they find that kind of love, when they see that they can bond without being controlled, that's when they finally allow themselves to bond forever. The forever bond grows slowly, and that is perhaps the most misunderstood truth about avoidance. Many people imagine that love should look like fireworks, instant closeness, and an immediate surrender of boundaries. But for someone who has spent a lifetime learning to protect themselves by pulling away, rushing into intimacy feels unsafe. To them, what others might describe as romance can feel like a trap. Their instinct is to retreat, to create space, to make sure they are not losing themselves in the process. And yet, that doesn't mean they are incapable of love. It means their love unfolds differently, more gradually, more carefully, but often more enduringly once it takes root. When we talk about a forever bond, we are talking about the rare kind of connection that survives the initial hesitation, the walls, and the pauses that an avoidant naturally brings into relationships. This bond is not about intensity in the beginning. It is about consistency over time. An avoidant will not open their heart to someone who demands constant reassurance or tries to bulldoze through their boundaries. They will, however, start to feel safe with someone who shows up steadily without pressuring them, who can say, I am here, but I am also okay if you need a little space. That slow reassurance tells the avoidant they can breathe, they can exist as themselves, and still be loved. Every step in building this kind of bond is small. It might be the avoidant answering a call they would normally ignore. It might be them sharing a story about their childhood they usually keep locked away. It might be them saying, I missed you, when normally they would hold those words back. Each small gesture is a crack in the armor. And while it doesn't happen quickly, it happens meaningfully. And because it happens slowly, the avoidant begins to believe in it. Trust is not something they give away easily. So when it grows, it has roots deep enough to withstand storms. There is also a profound shift that happens when the avoidant realizes that this bond does not threaten their identity. Many avoidants fear that closeness means losing themselves, that love demands they give up their independence. But in a safe, patient relationship, they learn that true connection does not erase individuality. Instead, it enhances it. They begin to see that being bonded does not mean being controlled. They can love without surrendering who they are. This realization doesn't come overnight. It is the result of countless small experiences where love proves itself not to be a cage but a home. And this is why the forever bond grows slowly. It isn't just about time, it's about proof. Each day, each interaction, each moment of honesty and respect builds a case in the avoidant's mind that maybe this time it's different. Maybe this time love is not something to fear. When that shift finally locks into place, the bond becomes unshakable because for someone who has spent their whole life holding people at arm's length, the decision to let someone in completely is monumental. It is not something they take lightly, and it is not something they undo easily. So yes, the forever bond grows slowly, but that is precisely why it lasts. When it finally blossoms, it is not fragile. It has been tested, doubted, resisted, and still it has survived. And for an avoidant, that survival is proof that this love is safe enough to stay, strong enough to trust, and rare enough to hold on to for a lifetime.